Imagine being a young student. You go to school hoping education will open doors to the future. But instead, you slowly realize that no matter how hard you study, the system around you is designed to keep you down. That was the reality for many young Black students in early 20th century South Africa. And it was during these years that a young man named Nelson Mandela began to understand something powerful. Education wasn't just about learning, it was about awakening. It was about understanding injustice, and it was about discovering the courage to challenge it. This is the story of how Mandela's education transformed him from a quiet village boy into a young man ready to question the system. By the time Nelson Mandela reached his teenage years, his life had already changed dramatically. After the death of his father, he was raised in the royal household of Jongintaba Dalindyebo, the acting king of the Tembu people. This new environment exposed Mandela to leadership, politics, and community decision-making. But the most important transformation was still ahead of him. Education would become the tool that opened his mind to a larger world and to the injustices shaping his country. Mandela attended a Methodist school, one of the few institutions offering education to Black South Africans. These schools were often run by Christian missionaries. They taught reading, writing, mathematics, and religious studies. Although the curriculum reflected European values and culture, it also provided opportunities that were otherwise unavailable. It was in one of these schools that Mandela received the English name Nelson. Teachers believed giving African students English names would help them fit into the colonial education system. For Mandela, school was both an opportunity and a challenge. He learned discipline, language skills, and the power of knowledge. But he also began to notice the limits placed on Black students. From an early age, Mandela loved learning. He read books, listened carefully to teachers, and asked questions about the world. Education helped him see beyond the boundaries of his rural upbringing. Through history and literature, Mandela discovered stories of leaders, philosophers, and revolutionaries. He began to understand that education could be a powerful tool for change. Many African leaders who later fought for independence also believed in the power of education. One famous quote from Mandela would later reflect this belief: "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." At this stage of his life, Mandela was still discovering what that meant. As Mandela grew older, his guardians wanted him to receive a higher level of education. He eventually enrolled at University of Fort Hare, one of the most respected institutions for Black students in South Africa at the time. Fort Hare was unique. It attracted some of the brightest African students from across the continent. Future leaders, intellectuals, and activists studied there. For Mandela, this was the first time he truly experienced a community of ambitious young African thinkers. Students debated politics, freedom, and the future of Africa. These discussions began to shape Mandela's political awareness. At Fort Hare, Mandela met students who were deeply concerned about the injustices in South Africa. They talked about racial discrimination, political rights, and the growing oppression of Black citizens. For many students, education was not just about careers. It was about preparing to challenge the system. Mandela listened carefully to these conversations. Although he was initially quiet and reserved, these debates began to influence his thinking. He started to see that the inequalities he had noticed during childhood were part of a much larger system, a system that needed to change. One of the most important moments in Mandela's student life happened during a protest at University of Fort Hare. Students were unhappy with the policies of the university administration. They believed the student council did not represent their interests. When students organized a boycott of the election process, Mandela supported the protest. This decision had serious consequences. The university administration demanded that Mandela withdraw from the protest and return to classes, but Mandela refused. As a result, he was expelled from the university. Although this setback seemed like a failure at the time, it became a turning point in his life. It was the first time Mandela openly stood. After his expulsion, Mandela returned home. His guardian, Jongintaba Dalindyebo, was disappointed by the news. He hoped Mandela would focus on completing his education and preparing for a traditional leadership role. Instead, Mandela was beginning to question the future that had been planned for him. he realized that his life might follow a completely different path, a path that would take him far from his rural home and toward the political struggles shaping his nation. Education changed Nelson Mandela forever. It opened his mind to the realities of injustice. It introduced him to ideas about freedom and equality, and it gave him the courage to challenge authority for the first time. Although he had been expelled from university, Mandela's journey was far from over. In fact, the next step in his life would be even more transformative, because soon Mandela would leave his village behind and move to the city of Johannesburg, a place where he would witness the harsh realities of racial inequality up close.